Hi, my name is Stephanie Dunlap. I'm a planning and zoning official for Indiana Borough. I participated in the Senior High Envirothon from 2010 to 2013. Today, I'm going to be discussing the Junior High Envirothon current issue topic, which is water resource management, local control, and local solutions. I'm at Yellow Creek State Park. This reservoir provides drinking water for Homer City and surrounding communities. Today you'll learn why it's important for us to protect these resources so we can have safe drinking water, places for recreation, and can provide a healthy habitat for our wildlife and aquatic species. The first topic I'm going to cover is the water cycle. Understanding the water cycle will build the foundation for other topics I am discussing today. As you can see, we have identified 6 parts of the water cycle: evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, infiltration, and runoff. As the word cycle implies, there is no specific starting point, but the water cycle illustrates how water is continually moving throughout the environment. For our purposes today, I'm going to start describing the cycle with evapotranspiration and condensation. Evapotranspiration describes 2 of the parts of the cycle that are often combined because they function similarly. The first part of this process is evaporation. This is caused when the sun heats liquid water along the Earth's surface to the point where it is transformed into a gas and can rise into the atmosphere. Transpiration is caused when plants take water from the soil through their roots to use to grow. Once the water has been used, it is released from the plant's leaves into the atmosphere. Condensation occurs in the atmosphere as these rising vapors are cooled to the point where they become liquefied again. Condensation leads to the formation of clouds and precipitation. Precipitation is the part of the water cycle where water falls through the atmosphere to the earth. In Pennsylvania, most precipitation comes in the form of rainfall. Snowfall amounts can vary north to south within the state. On average, Pennsylvania receives approximately 40 inches of precipitation annually. When precipitation filters downward into the soil, this is called infiltration. Infiltration plays an important role in supplying drinking water and recharging groundwater amounts. Most groundwater recharge occurs during the springtime. As I mentioned, groundwater is precipitation that infiltrates into the ground or soil and fills the spaces in what is called the saturated zone. The saturated zone is located beneath the surface. The layers of soil, sand, and rock beneath the surface are called an aquifer. In Pennsylvania, there are 4 main types of aquifers. PA aquifers include sand and gravel, sandstone and shale, crystalline rock, and carbonate rock. Aquifers vary greatly in size. Some aquifers occupy the area of several combined states, while others are only as large as a few acres. There are many pollution concerns associated with groundwater. Groundwater is an important resource that supplies over half of the U.S. population with drinking water. This percentage is even higher in rural areas like Indiana County. The greatest risk of groundwater contamination occurs when it is replenished quickly. Soil overlying the water table provides a primary source of protection against groundwater pollution, as soil works to filter pollutants from the water as it infiltrates. In rural communities, homeowners frequently cause contamination of their own groundwater supplies and drinking wells because of poor construction or maintenance of their on-site septic systems. Outside of this residential contamination, the best-known source of groundwater contamination is from old waste disposal sites or landfills. At this time, Monica Lee will show you how our groundwater and surface water can become contaminated.
So first we're going to talk about point source pollution. Point source pollution flows from a single specific point. One example of point source pollution is industrial plants. Another source of point source pollution is sewage plants. Although these systems are supposed to treat their waste and be up to code, not all of these systems are perfect and things also break and become faulty. Another source of point source pollution can also be stormwater, which is sometimes treated but not always. This typically just occurs and can be found coming out of stormwater drains, entering through here, and enters through the stream that way. So next we're going to talk about non-point source pollutions, where they are widely spread sources of pollution that cannot be found directly from a pipe like point source pollutions. One example of this is construction sites. As you can tell in this demonstration, there's no vegetation and there are no management practices like silt fencing that are trying to prevent erosion. Another example are lawn and golf courses, which use too much pesticides or fertilizers and have little vegetation that will filter it out. And it can also contaminate groundwater as it's sitting on the surface and leaches through the layers of soil. Another example is roads and lots. They are an impermeable surface, and chemicals and salt build up on those surfaces and are carried away with runoff. Another example is clearing forests. This disrupts and loosens the soil, which then increases soil erosion. Plowed fields can also increase soil erosion as they are improperly plowed, in addition to an overuse of pesticides used on crops, and that also gets carried away with runoff. This stream bank and lake shore also does not have any vegetation that will prevent erosion from runoff and wind, and it is incapable of filtering contaminants.
Another part of the water cycle is runoff. Runoff is precipitation that does not infiltrate but flows over the Earth's surface towards water bodies or low points in the land surface. Runoff is often discussed in terms of its rate and volume. Rate is the speed at which water is moving, where volume is the amount of water. Rate and volume are impacted by soil type, ground cover, slope, rainfall duration, and intensity. Runoff can potentially be a source of pollution when certain factors are in place. One factor of runoff is ground cover. Ground cover is described as either pervious or impervious. Pervious surfaces such as fields, forests, and lawns allow water to infiltrate through the soil. Impervious surfaces like concrete, sidewalks, rooftops, and roads are hard surfaces that do not let water infiltrate, causing runoff. The diagram shows how the amount of pervious versus impervious surface in an area impacts the water cycle. As you can see, as the amount of impervious cover increases, infiltration decreases, and the amount of runoff increases dramatically.
So as you can see, there are a lot of pollutions on this surface right now. Contamination typically occurs during precipitation, which is rain or snowmelt, which then runs off the ground surfaces and carries the pollutants with them as they drain into the watershed. Precipitation is also really important for recharging groundwater, and it becomes difficult as there are existing impermeable surfaces. So after our simulated day-long storm, you can notice that all of the pollution and the soil erosion has entered the watershed that is on this demonstration. So that can represent soil erosion, overuse of pesticides and fertilizers, contaminating the waters. In moderation, nutrients and bacteria are good for habitats, but too many nutrients, toxic substances, bacteria, and soil degrades the habitat quality of water, risking plants, macroinvertebrates, and wildlife's lives.
Low-impact development, or LID, is a technique that is used to help mitigate the effects of urban development. LID practices reduce the impact of the built environment by promoting more natural movement of water by mimicking and working with nature to manage stormwater runoff. Many believe that urban runoff is the greatest contaminant threat to U.S. waterways. By using low-impact development to preserve and recreate natural features, water is allowed to infiltrate closer to the source. This decreases the rate and volume of runoff and decreases the amount of pollutants that are carried in the runoff. The LID features also improve the aesthetics of an area and can make harsh urban environments more welcoming. Monica will now show you how vegetation, rain gardens, and trees can help filter pollutants from groundwater as it infiltrates slowly.
So previously, we discussed pollution sources. So now, as you can see, we have best management practices applied to the demonstration table. These areas represent vegetation strips, as we've discussed previously, and we have a wetland sitting on the golf course now, a riparian buffer zone, a contour strip, and another wetland. So for example, the construction site typically would use straw bales and silt fencing as a temporary measure, and then plant trees, shrubs, and grasses after construction as a permanent measure of maintaining runoff. The lawn and golf course can also reduce their use of pesticides and fertilizers, and even plant native plants that don't need extra care. Roads and lots have impermeable surfaces, which means that they're not able to absorb water. So then you're able to line the surfaces with vegetation, which will then filter the runoff and also prevent soils and everything like that from going into the water. Farms can also create small dams that will prevent soil pollution, and wetlands will even filter pollutants while slowing the rate of runoff. Wetlands can also remove excess nutrients, oils, bacteria, and other substances. Farmers are also capable of rotating plants and cover crops to increase their yields and also their quality of soils, and also use appropriate amounts of fertilizers and pesticides. So now we are going to represent another storm, and you will be able to notice how it changes. The water that collected in the watershed from both demonstrations were put into containers for comparison. The container on the left is from the first demonstration without wetlands or vegetation. It has a darker color and a higher water level. The container on the right is from the second demonstration that had felt patches to represent vegetation and wetlands. Similar to actual vegetation and wetlands, the amount of water is lower due to absorption, which also results in a slower flow rate of water. The lighter color also indicates that pollutants were able to be filtered by the felt patches, which is also similar to actual vegetation and wetlands in real life.
A local example of this can be found at the 8th Street parking lot at the corner of South 8th Street and Church Street in Indiana Borough. This project was completed around this time last year. The borough redeveloped the center of the parking lot from impervious concrete to a planted area that allows for infiltration of runoff from the site. You can see this in these before and after photos. In addition to the center of the lot, shown on these two slides, the length of the parking lot adjacent to 8th Street was also improved in the same manner. Since these photos were taken, new car stopper blocks have been added. These blocks are made from a durable recycled plastic. An electric vehicle charger was also installed. This parking lot additionally serves as a trailhead for the Hoodlebug Trail extension. If you get the opportunity, I encourage you to stop by and see the different environmentally friendly techniques that are demonstrated at this parking lot. The techniques used in low-impact development are often called best management practices, or BMPs. Two common BMPs are grassed swales and rain gardens. Swales are wide, shallow channels that allow runoff to move slowly. This slow movement across a planted area allows for pollutants and sediment to be filtered from the runoff. Traditional curbs and gutters transport water quickly without allowing for this filtration. Runoff is often transported directly to waterways without undergoing any kind of treatment. Rain gardens are made from a shallow depression that holds runoff. Gardens are planted with native species that filter and use runoff. Runoff that is not used by the plants infiltrates to restore the natural function of the water cycle and cause groundwater recharge. Pervious paving and green roofs are two other common BMPs. Pervious pavement allows some water to drain through the material into the soil, instead of running off traditionally impervious surfaces. Some maintenance is required to ensure that the pores of this material do not become clogged over time. These materials are best used in low traffic areas, but do offer an alternative to traditional paving options. Green roofs utilize native species and filter pollutants from stormwater collected on rooftops. They also help to reduce the amount of runoff, beautify a typically unhospitable location of the building, reduce utility costs, and lengthen the life of the roofing membrane. The photo example seen here is at the Bottle Works location in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. They have turned their green roof into a rentable space as well as an educational opportunity. Two more BMPs are disconnected downspouts and rain barrels. Downspouts traditionally connect to underground pipes that convey stormwater quickly and directly to waterways without infiltration or filtering. By disconnecting downspouts, water flows onto grass lawn areas where it can be filtered and then infiltrated through the soil. A specific method of disconnecting downspouts is to utilize a rain barrel. Rain barrels store and save rainwater from rooftops that can then be used for other purposes. Rain barrels use stormwater as a resource and not just a waste product of precipitation. Stored water can be used to water flowers, wash cars, and other outside tasks. It is not recommended for consumption due to the potential pollutants washed from the rooftops. Most rain barrels have a screen or other cover to prevent mosquito activity and to minimize the amount of leaves and debris stored in the rain barrel. You might be asking yourself how you can help protect your local waterways. In addition to learning more about the techniques I've presented today and advocating for these practices in your community, school, and home, there are some additional ways that you can help. The average American uses between 80 and 100 gallons of water every day. 2/3 of indoor residential water use comes from toilets, showers, and faucets. It is important for everyone to be aware of their water use and find ways to reduce unneeded water consumption. I have listed several ways that individuals can reduce their consumption at home, but there are many other ways. With everyone working together, we can protect our groundwater supply so that we have access to safe drinking water and recreation. We are also helping to improve the environment for wildlife and aquatic species. Together, we can make a difference. Here at Yellow Creek, you can tell that where I'm standing should be underwater. Drought conditions make it so important that we do our part to conserve water. Today, you've learned about several ways that you as individuals can help make an impact on your local water source. With everyone making little impacts, we can have a greater impact overall in our region.